This is a PSA. This is a message for fellow white people like myself. Bonus points if you live in Atlanta. Extra bonus points if you've ever said the words all lives matter or cops lives matter or blue lives matter or have any of those flags hanging in your life and your home and your car, anything. So first off, you're incorrect. Black lives matter. Blue lives, those are chosen. You choose to become an officer. And when you choose to become an officer, you choose to protect your city, your people. And that's not what's happening. That is not what's happening. My friends, my black friends, my friends of color are living every life in absolute god-awful fear.
And it wasn't even until 2009, I was in college at the time, that we got our first black Disney princess, and she was a frog for most of the movie. White privilege is being able to walk into any hair salon and knowing without a shadow of a doubt you're going to be able to find a stylist who is competent in how to cut and style your texture of hair. White privilege is getting pulled over by a cop and the only thing that you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket instead of worrying that you might say or do something that will get you killed. White privilege is not being followed closely around in a store because employees have assumed, based on the color of your skin, that you might steal something. White privilege is being given the benefit of the doubt in a lot of different situations solely just because you look like you're a nice person. White privilege is being able to travel freely to pretty much anywhere in the world and being welcomed by the people that live there. White privilege is interviewing for a job and not having to worry about your natural hair or if the interviewer has already written you off just because of the color of your skin. And that's not even close to being a complete list. Let me end with this. If you could choose to be black, would you? That's kind of a rhetorical question because any white person that answers yes is a liar. Because you see and are fully aware of how black people are historically and presently treated in this country and globally by white people and the systems that we uphold. And you know damn well you wouldn't choose that for yourself. That is white privilege. And it is absolutely sinister that in the year 2023, there are white people like you who are acting completely aloof to having said privilege. And that is white privilege.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to react to this video where students are being asked about the concept of white privilege. And apparently it exists and it's wrong to say otherwise. So it'll be interesting to see what they say. But I wanted to look at the dictionary definition. Yes, it's in a dictionary of the term, so let's have a look. White privilege is the set of social and economic advantages that white people have by virtue of their race, in a culture characterized by racial inequality. So in order to believe in the concept of white privilege, you have to believe that the races are not equal and that white people are privileged, have advantages simply because they're white. And then I've got examples, recent examples on the web when Jill Biden invited the losing team to the White House. They're saying that's an example. So let's take a look at this video and see what the students have to say.
Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania has recently postponed an event that centered around being tired of cis white men. So I'm at UT campus to ask students what they think about the event. Let's go find out.
Saying like we're tired of straight white men in society is really as like explicit as it sounds. I think it's just contributing to a general idea that like we're tired of straight white men having the power and everything, you know. And it's like we as women of color, as like students at this university, like we're very much capable of certain things and we don't have the same privileges that are offered to straight white men.
And I've been hearing that from a lot of the ladies that I've been talking to today. Talk to me about what some of those privileges are that, you know, straight white men have that you don't have. Talk to me about that.
I think I don't really know. Have you ever experienced like a specific instance?
I don't know, but I also need to go.
I know, I do need to go. I'm sorry.
So clearly she was just regurgitating what she's been told to say. Like she's just regurgitating what she's heard, probably via social media. Now, when asked to give specific examples, they run off.
Especially people of color, we know the privileges or the advantages certain races have.
Talk to me about some of those privileges that white people have that you guys don't have.
I would just be like, okay, I
I guess I'll start with I am a black queer person. If I were to just walk amongst the streets, I'm also like women like I look very feminine. If I were to walk across the streets in the dark as a black queer female presenting person, I would not feel safe because I feel like I would be pretty targeted. But if I were a white cis man, I don't think I'd be like the type of person someone would come up to and hate crime, because that's just not
Juicy. Juicy Smolier.
what happens.
Well, I mean, that applies to anybody. There's places where a white straight man may not be able to walk freely. Like a bad neighborhood. None of us will feel safe in a bad neighborhood, regardless of race. So I don't really see how that's white privilege. Obviously, she was unable to come up with any examples that applies to, that don't apply to everybody. Something that a straight white man can do that you can't. They can't come up with examples.
I'm certainly cognizant of my own privilege because of my own race. This is the color of my skin.
What privileges are those?
Lots of things. I mean, like, I think there are certain assumptions that come with certain people. Like when they look at a black person or an Indian person, they automatically have this profile in their head, racial profiling, and that still exists. I mean, we're not going to escape that until human depravity itself goes away.
I mean, let's just be honest. Most people, when they walk down the street, they don't really care. They see an Indian person or a black person, they don't care. Now, if you're dressed a certain way, yes, people may put up a defense because there's certain connotations with dressing a certain way. If you dress, in line with your favorite rapper, if you dress like your favorite rapper, when he's not going to a business meeting, as, the way they dress in the music videos, you dress like that, yeah, there will be certain connotations that people may have in their mind. But if you're just dressed like a regular person, I don't think people are that preoccupied with attributing certain, characteristics to people of a particular race. So just walking down the street, they don't really care. They're just getting on with their lives. And what he said at the beginning, I acknowledge my privilege as a white man or whatever, that's just something clearly he's been told to regurgitate. That's something that he picked up and he feels he has to say. It's really sad, actually, when you think about it. I acknowledge my privilege. I mean, it's almost like, he's been subject to some sort of education for him to feel he needs to say that.
Talk to me about some of the privileges that white men are awarded that you guys are not awarded.
Definitely, I guess just getting away with situations. If I were to, I don't know, I guess... Here you go. I
It's situations like if I had a problem with, a male teacher and they were a white cis male, there was less of a chance for something to happen to them because of it. I could literally report them for anything, but because of that, if they were upstanding in the community, sucks to me, basically.
Do you think that it would be the same reaction if it was a black male teacher?
No.
I think this problem would be solved immediately.
Oh yeah.
I think they just, if you read an article or if you're scrolling through TikTok, there are certain videos of people who are very emotional, very passionate about what they're talking about. And that elicits an emotion in you as the person listening to this stuff. So I think they've just been kind of conditioned to have an emotional response when they hear certain terminology, straight white man. That elicits an emotional response. Like the name Trump elicits an emotional response. You ask people questions, okay, so what has he said that's racist? What laws did he implement that were racist? Well, good people on both sides, such and such, they come up with those examples. And it's like, okay, but when you look at the context, He's talking about the people protesting the statue. Oh, well, you know, same thing here. This is how I feel when I hear that term, but I can't tell you why I feel the way I feel. And I can't give you facts. I can't give you concrete evidence or examples. I just know it makes me feel this way because I've been listening to the media. I've been scrolling through TikTok. And now I have an emotional response rather than a logical response.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like POC people are like more
See, I feel like
targeted, or minorities are more targeted, especially with like crimes in general, or if a person of color was to do something wrong, people would deal with it more quickly than if it was a cis white male.
So you mentioned straight white men having more privileges. Can you talk to me about what some of those privileges are?
Yeah, so generally, you know, there's not really ever a sense of like discrepancy whenever someone is trying to, let's say for instance, there is a man who commits a crime and he's, you know, a regular looking white guy. Police are, you know, generally more likely to not have adverse reactions to them. Say if they're like having any sudden movements or sharp movements, they'll generally be more lenient with them compared to if it was like a black or brown person.
Where do you get that analysis from?
Like statistics, crime statistics, rates of arrest compared to comparing you know, white people to like black and brown people or minorities in general.
What would you say to people who say like the black community commits the majority of the crime, that's why they're more likely to be arrested? What would you say to that point?
I would say that there are certain factors of society that have contributed to black and brown people being more impoverished, and crime is sort of the way that a lot of people see an escape from this poverty. You know, stealing is a crime, but say you're a hungry man and you go into a grocery store and you steal some food for you or your family. Is that really a crime, or are you just trying to survive at that point? You know?
Wow. So again, it's kind of like the data speaks for itself when it comes to crime and certain groups who are involved in crimes, especially when we look at our inner cities, when you look at gang violence that occurs in our inner cities. That is, you know, an issue with black and black crime that exists. And I believe that if we kicked up as much fuss about black on black crime as we do when a black person dies at the hands of a white person, perhaps we would get somewhere in addressing the issues. But when we make up excuses and say it's about, you know, well, you know, maybe it's because they're in poverty, maybe it's because they're hungry, when really the reality is if someone commits a drive-by shooting, it's not because they're hungry. It's because they have a lack of value for life, even if it's someone who looks like them. The police officer in Chicago, Ariana Preston, who was murdered by 2 or 3 thugs. They tried to rob her and then ended up killing her and taking her life. They didn't do that because they're hungry or because, you know, they're desperate for food. No. In order to address these issues, we can't make excuses and, you know, baby a particular group. That's not going to ensure that, you know, our neighborhoods are safer. And this is, you know, it's a catastrophic culture issue. It's a catastrophic, you know, level of crime that we're dealing with, where we're seeing deaths every day. Mass shootings occur in Chicago, especially during the summer, almost every weekend. You just research it and look up the reports. It's like, wow, another mass shooting. But unless it's something that they can use to create a narrative to push a certain political agenda, then they don't care. They don't care. And it's really sad. As long as we continue to only highlight issues that help push a certain narrative, like, you know, we want to say this is a hate crime because a white person was involved, even when there's no evidence of racism. We say that it's a hate crime, but the first thing we say is it's racism. Like in the case of Jordan Neely, the first thing people were saying was that it was racism. But in that same week, we had actual hate crimes of white people being targeted by black criminals, white people who were basically killed just because they were white. There were at least 2 cases of that happening in the same week, and not one politician, not one person in the media was on Twitter lamenting about it. And now, again, if we address the real issues, regardless of race, then maybe we'll see some improvement. Maybe we will see our communities become safer. So again, I'm actually surprised that they couldn't come up with any examples. They really couldn't come up with any examples of this so-called white privilege. And again, I always say that if white privilege was, you know, a real thing, white people would be the top earners in this country. The top earners are people, you know, within Asian communities. And we wouldn't struggle to come up with examples. We really wouldn't. Very interesting. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video.